It's finally time to start firing up the grill. From city to shore, Acme is everything you need to prep for this summer season. Download the Acme app to shop for this season's essentials any way you want. Open the Acme app, clip your deals, then order your items online. An experienced Acme associate will carefully select your groceries, bag your order, and bring it right to your car or deliver right to your door. Download the app or visit acmemarkets.com for program details.
Hi there, I am Adam Kirbas here in Ordu. This is in Turkey. It is July, it is summer. I hope you all are doing fine in the pandemic. This is the second year of the pandemic. So I think people already get vaccinated, however, and that we will eventually go past this. I mean, today I have partially announced that we will talk about environmentalism, but as well as the rise of the left, or how leftism is to be understood in comparison to the baby boomers. I mean, I think it would not make much sense if we would talk about the history of leftism, since this would lead too far, as well as there is enough literature. I mean, leftism beginning with the French Revolution or in Great Britain. However, we rather want to compare it with the baby boomers, or make comparisons between baby boomers and millennials. And especially, we want to know what has changed. I mean, this is partially what and why. This is how we ask something scientifically, or no, not only scientifically, but in general. I mean, if you some sort of interested in the world, you should always ask why did this happen, why did that happen, and because this why can then give you an understanding how processes work. I mean, how change comes about, because this is what this is all about. I mean, if you only see the human history is the history of constant changes, and these changes, they do not happen accidentally. I mean, of course, there are some accidental changes, like diseases, pandemics, whereas this pandemic, well, however, was not so accidental than you might think. However, but overall, if you say some political changes and so on, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, and so on, there were some sort of a pretext on it. So this was already brewing for a couple of years, and then something happened in the French Revolution. Indeed, it was the weather or the crops that some sort of peasants starved, and then they pretty much overthrew the landlords, and then this was then accepted in Paris, and so on and so on. So, but in order, if you wanna have a more understanding of the world, more and understand changes, then you should always ask the why and try to make sense of it, and then to look at changes, and the best way to look at changes is to compare it, and then in this comparison we make conclusions. And today we will try to pinpoint baby boomers and millennials, or how, I would say rather, how in general political affiliation changed. I mean, again, we are in the technological age, and the assumption is, of course, that technological development brought about change. We talked about this, but nevertheless, we will some sort of resume some thoughts we had earlier, and this is, of course, the baby boomer age generation, or what happened after the Second World War. Um, Europe became some sort of apolitical. Then in Europe, nevertheless, the daily life was in a way managed by political parties. This is indeed different to the US, because in US you don't have in that sense party membership. In the US, things happen rather through religious groups, so organization happen through religious groups, memberships, friendships. This is indeed something which is of course for a highly developed country unusual in that sense, because Europe is not that like, or in Europe people do not socialize and affiliate through religious groups, at least not mainly. However, but in Europe, some sort of political affiliation was always hereditary. So you would inherit the political views of your parents in a way, but as well as some sort of socio-economical background, the people you grow up with, you would have either way or in a way or another the same political opinions, the same thought, the same approach, and of course the social closeness. I mean, after the First World War, Europe was pretty much shattered, destroyed. People lived in poverty. And then the Black Friday in 1929, and then the entire world economy crumbled. Then of course poverty played a crucial role. So this was one of the reasons you have to be aware. So not poverty alone was the reason for the rise of the National Socialists and the Nazis, but poverty was one of the reasons. And then, of course, scapegoats, this political affiliations, they always work with scapegoats. So people cannot do without it. But nevertheless, you could say that in the baby boomer era, the individual was not so in the center of all attention, or was not in the center of political affiliation. It was rather the group, your social background, as well as, of course, that within the baby boomer era, you did not have much choice, and in the baby boomer era, you could this was very significant. Or during the Cold War, there were these grand narrations of political parties. So the political parties, they would come with ideology. This was between left and right, between conservatives and socialism. I mean, and they would cover all aspects of your life. I mean, literally. So if you, especially in Europe, where you would not be a member of a church, but really a member of a political circle, of a social circle. So politics was synonymous with your social circle, which you belong to, as well as cultural circle. And in Austria, for example, in rural Austria, there are political groups. These would be cultural groups and so on. These were the main areas where people would gather, where you would be part of it. I mean, you did not need it to be part of a political party or so on, but yet, if you're part of this political circle, or cultural circle, social circle, whatever, then you would mostly adopt the beliefs and opinions of these people. So you had a way more social closeness. People way more socialized, of course, and this was then very important and significant and formative on your worldview, on your ideological worldview, and ideology in general works with resentment, works with us versus them, and as well as with good between evil. I mean, don't get me wrong, socialists or in the socialist ideology, they are always this evil capitalist, or they are always portrayed as this evil capitalist, but never unless the same happens the other way around. I mean, conservatives consider socialists as evil as well as without God, as without belief, without moral values, and so on, some vain people and so on. So this works both ways. I mean, one thing one has to say, this is very important, that these social groups where people organized themselves, they were as well as, you could say, some sort of a safety net. I mean, the reason why, or one of the reasons why while the religious groups in the US, for example, have still a lot of attraction, is because they support their members. I mean, if you do not have some sort of health insurance and so on, so these churches cover for that, and the same was some sort of in these social groups in Europe. I mean, of course, there was some sort of a welfare state which was initiated not by the left but by the conservatives in Germany. They started in Germany under Otto von Bismarck, and this was an attempt to stop the influence of communism, so that in a way this welfare or social support made people in a way independent as well, but this was not go too far. But in general, of course, I mean, especially during the or in between the First and the Second World War, people were poor. People did not have much, and that's why they were dependent on these social circles, on these social gatherings. I mean, to say it simply, to say it plainly, there was food. I mean, you can even see this partially here in Turkey, with some in the Shia community. You see this. I mean, that people, they depend on their superiors, especially for basic needs like food. I mean, this is where they get the food from, and so on. And this was not different back then. And of course, it is a good safety net for poverty, and it helps these people. I mean, if you're unemployed, then your chances of getting employment through these social groups was much higher than you might see. And this was during the baby boomer era, or after the Second World War, that especially in Europe, many companies were state-owned. So this would mean that if you wanted to accomplish something in your life, you pretty much had to join a political party. And in Austria, in the past, this was really very strict and severe. So even though if you wanted to be just or being promoted to a section's leader or whatsoever, you had you had to have some connections, and these connections then meant the political party, because in a way that political system in Austria and so on, this was, or the economic system in that sense, the economic system was rather closed. So because many companies were state-owned, this meant that the company leadership was chosen by the parties, and this was always some sort of a difficult issue, because there were many state companies, and then this political bartering started. I mean, you get the leadership of this company, then and we get the leadership of this company. This is actually very common in Austria. For example, there this political bartering is significant, and this is part of, you could say, where when things work. This is in Austria especially. There you don't have any checks and balances through the courts. These things, they don't exist, because in Austria the or democracy only started. I mean, there were before some attempts of constitutional monarchy, but these were rather vague. But after the First World War, then for the first time in Austria as well as in Germany, you could say some sort of a full-fledged democracy started, and this is and so in Austria the democracy pretty much was toppled very fast. It became authoritarian, exclusive, and so on. And then after the Second World War, when the Nazism was beaten, then there was some sort of a second attempt for democracy and so on. And so in general, people had not much experience in their democracy, especially in Austria and Germany, where people just did not have a long tradition. I mean, the same was in France. For example, France, despite the fact of the glorious French Revolution, the real democracy was not really established, because after the French Revolution came Napoleon. Napoleon, even though he's being considered a despot and so on, but he was necessary to end this terror and then bring the revolution outside of France. However, but then there came the Restoration, then again some sort of an attempt of democracy, and then again some the Second Empire under Napoleon's grandnephew, and so on, or under Napoleon's nephew. However, and these things then never really helped to develop a democracy, whereas in the US, you could say some sort of, with this American Revolution, it was persistent. It could keep itself persistently, and so on. However, and this to come back to Austria, or if you want to stay in the US, I mean, in Austria, in the US, people have a strong affiliation with law. There is the rule of law, human rights, or whatever, had a huge impact on the American. Despite the fact that you think and assume that the American law is not perfect, it is nowhere, nevertheless. But this American way of checks and balances, this was, I think, one of the main reasons why it works, is because that there is the rule of law, and the second important thing is that people believe in the rule of law, believe in the justice of rule of law. That's the reason why you do not have to make political bartering in the US. This is all one of the reasons, but that it is a functioning legal system, whereas in Europe, especially in Germany and Austria, there is political bartering, because, and this is the only way of checks and balances, so that you keep an eye on the other party, because that's the only way you can really match each other, or can eye each other. And when these mechanisms do not work, when they do not function, because a new force or whatever comes from outside these checks and balances, then you can see, and this is what you then saw, it is then pretty much easy to become authoritarian if you get rid of these checks and balances. And this is rather not written in any law and so, but it is rather, you could say, in Europe, people just did not trust each other. So this meant that they would always have it was the politics, especially in Austria as well as in Germany, it was rather always to some sort of a suspicion, and that everyone wanted to eye everyone, and that for everything one political party got, the other wanted to have recompensation and so on. And in addition to this, the political parties, this was rather simple. I mean, it was mainly the socialists and the conservatives. And later on, those political parties, they became more issues. And of course, the business landscape was way more different than in the US, and it is to this very day more different than in the US, because those great companies like Amazon and Google, Facebook, they did not emerge in continental Europe, or if they emerged, there were only a few, and they could never really have so much influence in that sense. So that in continental Europe, the state had always a firm grip on the economy. I mean, you could say this in one hand, you could say, yeah, this was an advantage. I mean, if you only see in Germany, the companies, this is, they are not so big as the American companies or juggernauts, and they are very productive. So this is the so-called the famous German Mittelstand. So these companies are very productive, but yet they cannot really compete with the giants of the business. I mean, the European economy can in no way resist the onslaught of China and the US. So in that sense, it is some sort of a two-edged sword. I mean, what is the right business model? And of course, I mean, we said it many times, capitalism works at best when there is competition in the market, and that the state enables everyone to take part in this competition, so that pure merit decide. This is when capitalism works at its best, when there is no exclusion, and the state some sort of really goes in to the market and creates conditions, not only conditions not of protectivism, but rather of perfect competition, so that everyone can take part in the economy, in the part, and then you could then accomplish something through merits. And this is actually not the case, or this is in Europe, you could say partially it's the case in some countries, and these countries, they are then wealthy, or wealth is evenly distributed, but nevertheless this form of capitalism was not accomplished so far. If you only watch in the US, this is really only a few companies, they have monopolies, and they pretty much dictate the business landscape, and this is not how things work. I mean, if you only see past in the Reagan area and so, I mean, there were a whole different approach to capitalism. There were people or companies were even forced to share their information with others, so in order to enable a fair growth and equal growth. However, and this was then pretty much abandoned later after Reagan, you could say in that sense, after the Reagan era, this was pretty much abandoned, and this is one of the reasons why you can see, I mean, it is in the US, it goes back to the Gilded Age, it goes back how the capitalism developed, or rather how industrialism developed in the US. I mean, the US, this was some sort of a mind blowing how fast this country industrialized. I mean, this was unique in history, but nevertheless, one of the reasons of this amazingly fast growth was that many people lost out, that it came to only a few companies who then dominated the market and still dominated to this very day, and this is why in the US the economy or businesses have way more influence than you might than in Europe, but and of course the economy was very different in the baby boomer age, because in the baby boomer age, or before the baby boomer age, there was some sort of this huge industrial blocks, there was this industrial production. So this heavy industry shifted towards mass consumption, mass consumed. This is what started with the baby boomers, that people consumed more. And one key note and key shift is tourism. I mean, think about Pan Am and so on, as well as in Europe. Tourism started, wealth started. This was in the during the Cold War, and with this and then mass consume, especially through fashion. This is how people expressed themselves. This is how Leftism then later expressed itself, and some sort of changed color, or became more and more your clothes and so on, became more and more your sign, or in a way part of your expression. And this always and this came with a reduction of working hours. So this meant that with tourism, this is when the first time people start to plan their leisure time, because tourism back then and still to this very day needs some planning. Back then you had to go to the travel agency. Today it is only a mouse click, but nevertheless you still have to have some planning. This is how it all started, how you plan your leisure time. And even today, even though if you do not go on vacation and whatsoever, this is still your leisure time is being planned also. So with the reduction of working hours, these people have developed hobbies, go after hobbies and so on. But then with the millennia, with the fall of the Soviet Union, with the fall of the Iron Curtain, things change, political affiliation changed. I mean, those grand narratives between socialism and conservatism, between left and right, they pretty much cease. I mean, you can see this today in the European party landscape. Those old grand parties like the Socialist Party and Conservative Party, they struggled to have the majorities, and this was back in the days. This was different. Back in the days, one political party, either if it is socialism or conservative party, would pretty much entail at least half would entail at least half of the eligible voters, in a sense, their views, their opinions, and would support them with the ideology. You could. This is indeed existent today in the US. I mean, this is rather astonishing that the Americans can still manage this, but nevertheless this crumbles as well. I mean, you saw this when or you see this many fractions within a party, especially when there is some sort of vying for a party nomination. This is some sort of election before the election, and those that there are many candidates wanting to become the party nominee for president, and there you can always see that this is actually a wide range between different groups, and that this in a way mirrors the political diversification or diversity in today's technological age, and this has, of course, changed the political landscapes. I mean, children do not follow the footsteps of their parents anymore. This is especially true for Europe. Those groups, the internet, social media, and so on. I would not say that they have loosened group bondages. Not at all. I mean, we talked about this. This is rather about individualism, and that the individuum is rather in the center of all attention. So, and with social media, new groups founded itself. So people are in today's time. You are not in today's time. You are not just part of one political group anymore. You are part of many. This goes beyond borders. I mean, only imagine the Black Lives Matter movement or the Me Too movement. These movements had international appeal, were recognized internationally, especially in Germany and Austria. Everything what happens in the US has, in a way or another, influence in the daily politics. And of course, one reason why party affiliations crumbled is that part of this state-owned companies were sold to private investors, so that they became normal businesses. This is something one had to do in order to be compatible, because in Europe there was always a big issue. I mean, how can you make state-owned companies some sort of economically successful, and so on, and this is one of the big issues, and privatization was one reason, and once this fell, because many people joined political parties in order to accomplish something. This was mostly your only chance to accomplish anything, especially in Austria. I mean, in Austria, if you want to be even a section or a department leader or whatsoever, you need to be part in a party. But this somehow ended. This was ended with this privatization, so it became more liberal. You do not have to be part of a party anymore in order to accomplish anything, or you just leave it. This is especially in the European Union. You don't have to live in a special country anymore. You can live everywhere. I mean, of course, this is always easier said than done, because there are still language barriers, and even though you are free to move, I mean, this is not very easy to settle down. Especially you need money. This is money. Without money, it is even difficult to live across the border. So, however, but then of course foreign politics have influence. So this is especially in Europe with the European Union. I mean, the European Union is something people outside Europe can hardly imagine. I mean, this is this huge giant block. No one really knows how it works. I mean, don't bother. European do not know it either. It is some sort of opaque black box. No one, and it has many bureaucrats. This is what we know. It has a lot of bureaucrats. It has a lot of representatives. It is bloated. But so how it really works, and I mean with really works, how these institutions act with each other, this is way not openly, and many things in the European Union happen or are just simple undemocratic. The public has no view or whatsoever. I mean, if you only see how the American politics, or how American democracy is in a way open, or for everyone visible. This is way not so the case in Europe with the European Union, because the EU is this giant construct which is blurry. People have lost their sovereignty, or the national state has lost their sovereignty. And if you're a small state like Austria and other countries, then you don't have really an independent politic, or you cannot make an independent politic. You pretty much depend on your neighbors. Whereas Austria was always dependent from Germany. There was always this mocking of German, of one Austrian chancellor who would always go into a meeting with the German chancellor without having an opinion, but then he would come out with an opinion, and especially the opinion of the German chancellor. So Germany was in a way always leading in Germany. In Austria, or had always some sort of or would steer politics in that sense. But however, the European Union partially contributed to the fact that people became, especially in Europe, more and more disillusioned. One key word here is consens democracy, which is very slow, which is very you never know what the people agreed. Consens just means that people come together and try to sort out an agreement. This is not the American presidential system. If in the US one party gains power, you can accomplish a lot in a very short amount of time. This is not the case in Europe. This is not the case in a parliamentarian democracy. Their processes take long. There are indeed exceptions, especially if you want to overthrow the government. Then things happened very fast, however, but it did not succeed. But one important issue is that these grand narrations some sort of ended. The individual became the center of all attention. So this overall ideology, which would then determine every part of your life, this pretty much ended to a drawer narration, and drawer or niche narration, which just means that those political parties stopped giving the ideologies and so on, but rather life advice or some specific political issues. This is the rise of the Green Party, for example. This was the environment. This is what they cared. This is how it all started. So a small aspect was picked out, and this is where they got a lot of support. These environmental issues, especially in Europe with or in Austria with this started against those atom energy or those radioactive energy, against those nuclear power plants. This is what they protested against. This is some sort of a protesto culture, and from there it started. So they only offered a small political agenda, not this overall narration which comes with ideology, which how can things done. And this was partially dominating within the Green Party even up even recently. So the main points of the Green Party were environment, feminism, and LGBTQ rights, and this was pretty much it. Then later on, with the decline of the socialist groups, then more and more the Green Party tried to go beyond these environmental issues, but nevertheless they just did not really succeed, because it is still some sort of a fringe narration. It is some sort of confined to a small group or some small individuals which which have some sort of a trait, or this may be LGBTQ community, which are connected through the through the sexuality, then environmentalists, and as well as feminists. So there was no attempt anymore to some sort of broad connect with a broader base of the population. And the Green Party, this is indeed interesting, because the Green Party in Austria split it from the Socialist Party, and this was rather, this is always, and we will talk about this later, but one of the reasons why there is a Green Party was actually that Protestant leftists could not work with Catholic leftists. So this is another reason. And you could see that the Protestant religion, or the is very present in the Green Party, whereas socialists tend to be Catholic, so they are not all atheists. This has to do with the fact that in Austria as well as in Germany, the church, or the connection between politics and church, is very tight, or with religion. This is very tight, and so socialists, they are not atheists. This is, I heard about atheist socialists in France. At least this is what people say. These are that in France, of course, in France, in general, religion is not plays no significant role, except if it goes to exclude others. However, you could see that with the Green Party, some sort of a new spiritualism arose. This was especially after the fall of the Soviet Union. This was the visible failure of a grand narration of an ideological construct, and this led to a vacuum, and this vacuum was then filled with some sort of a new spiritualism with connection to the nature, with healthy living and so on, because one of the reasons is, as well as that, it's about your one of the key ingredients how you can understand green movements and so on, is that you have to look at the individuals. Then you see it is rather about ordering your life, eating healthy and so on. It is about identity. It is about personal identity anymore, more than the group and how you are being, and how you position yourself in the society. And of course, many in the Green Party, you could say that they were better off or wealthy socialists, because this is something you see in the US as well. There's a broad range of people who support, or why people support the Socialist Party. One are poor, they have other socio-economic backgrounds, whereas others have other interests and so on. And the rise of the Green Party, this is something you could say this was a protesto culture from white liberals and white from the white middle class, who then some sort of came with a new spiritualism after the fall of the Soviet Union, and that some sort of disenchant, detached themselves from Marxist thoughts, so from Marxist ideology, and some sort of only focused on a fringe society, of a fringe ideology. So this was today about environmentalism and how the Green Party came about. We will talk about this way often. This is very important, especially how leftism grow. So no, don't worry. This was Adem Kirbas from Ordu in Turkey. I hope that you all come good through the pandemic and take care of yourself. Bye.
It's finally time to start firing up the grill. From city to shore, Acme is everything you need to prep for this summer season. Download the Acme app to shop for this season's essentials any way you want. Open the Acme app, clip your deals, then order your items online. An experienced Acme associate will carefully select your groceries, bag your order, and bring it right to your car or deliver right to your door. Download the app or visit acmemarkets.com for program details.